Hi, I'm Parker Beck. This is my assignment for MOL 625, assignment number 1. And then this is my roommate right here, Aiden. Aiden's one of the people that I interviewed in my assignment, so we'll get into that. But yeah.
All right. How did your 4 interviews go?
I thought my 4 interviews went really well. So I interviewed a teacher, 2 coaches, and I interviewed you, who works at Poncheros. So I'll dive more into the teacher one, especially that's the one that I'm gonna dive way deep into on. Basically, what happened during COVID, they had online learning, so it's like the teachers had to adjust to a different style of learning, which is a big adaptive challenge, especially for teaching. I don't think we've had that at all, before COVID, in regards to having people teach remotely online for people that didn't sign up for that. You know what I mean? So I think that's the big one that I want to dive into later. And then the one that you talked about, so you were a Poncheros leadership team member up in Cedar Rapids, Mount Vernon area. And so basically, again, during COVID, what happened is there was no dining rooms that were open. You couldn't eat inside, and that was all fast food restaurants, basically. So what happened was there was a decline in customers, decline in revenue. And so in order to adjust that, you guys ended up having to offer offer promotions through food services like Grubhub and Uber Eats, which then would allow for more people to order them. And then another thing that you mentioned was that you would have specials for people that came in. So people would come into the restaurant and you'd have maybe buy this and you get a free chips and queso, or have better reward systems and stuff like that for people that came in. And then you also talked about how you expanded the outdoor seating, which I think is really important to do, especially during COVID. It seems so small, but then at the same time, it does combat that challenge of not having the dining room if you have the space for outdoor seating, of course. And then the last two I interviewed were both sports coaches. So the first one I interviewed her name's Kelsey. She's my other coach at North Scott Club Soccer. And so what she found out is middle school age kids, she noticed that once they reach that age, they start to lose interest, especially with them trying to focus on one sport only. They're at that age where they're kind of starting to specialize. So what she found out is that that's the challenge is how do you keep them motivated? And what she found out is that she needs to make practices where everybody can be more involved. And then you have more small group work, which entails everybody combining regardless of skill. So you have maybe the worst people with some of the best people in the same group. So it kind of shows that everybody's involved, everybody's there. And then she also said setting personal goals was huge because she was able to do that. And then she was able to see hey, did you work on your touches? Did you do this? Did you do that? Kind of create a checklist. And then based on that checklist, you could reward people, and then it made people just want to keep doing it. So then it automatically you had that engagement factor. And the last one was a college soccer coach of mine that I had a couple years ago. And so what happened at the beginning of the season, the team, he had brought in a bunch of new people, from international people to people that were born in the States. And so it was just a weird team dynamic, and they didn't really have that feeling of team culture, team togetherness. So what he ended up doing is really creating a focus on how can I make sure that this team is connected like that. So he didn't focus on the technical skills of passing, dribbling, shooting as much. More how can I keep this team connected? And he did that by having more team bonding events, doing stuff like that. And then the thing that I really took away was that he didn't really like the idea of having captains because that kind of forces someone into that leadership role. So what he did instead is he would just see how people were performing throughout the week, kind of who was stepping up throughout the week of practices, and then he would make them their captains. And then that kind of allowed for there to be a fluidity between leadership, which he found out really helped the team culture a lot, which I thought was very interesting because you don't see that a lot in sports.
All right, and out of those 4, which one stood out to you the most?
So like I said, the teaching one stood out to me the most, especially being a teacher. I absolutely think if next time we will be way more prepared for something like this that happens. But looking back on it 5 years later, as I interviewed my teacher, my guy that I student taught for, he really believed that we will make better changes. But during that time, so the example we use in class is on the balcony. You're looking at it from on the balcony instead of on the dance floor. On the dance floor is a different perspective than on the balcony. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
So then right now, if we're looking at the problem in 2025, we're kind of on the balcony looking at it. But then if we're on the dance floor, kind of that's during COVID, then it could even be breaking down even further. So if you're in there and you're just looking at the balcony, or if you're in there looking at the dance floor, it's kind of how can I get these assignments posted? But then if you're looking on the balcony, it's how can we retain student attention, increase literacy rates, do all that. So I think that's very important to have as a teacher. especially looking at it from that point of view to try to make that adaptive change and not just saying, hey, let me get these in so I can get grades in. Like, you know what I mean? Looking more at that, can I change a student? So I think that was very important. And so he kind of broke down 3 different solutions, which kind of goes to question 3. 3 different solutions that they had, and one of them's a solution that he thinks that he wishes he did back in 2020. And so that first one would be to record weekly lessons. They kind of do that now. Like you're able to record lessons. So like say you're going to be gone on Tuesday. There's no school Tuesday, snow day, whatever. Monday ahead of time, they'll kind of know forecast wise. So then he'll have all those lessons recorded that he wants them to watch Tuesday. So they can download it offline. So they can download it online at the school and then watch it offline at home in case they don't have Wi-Fi, which is really important because that's a big issue, especially with the during COVID. A lot of students didn't have access to Wi-Fi. And then the next one that he talked about was having introduced flexible office hours. And he did this and he said this really worked. He said it kind of allowed for students at any time throughout the day to ask him questions, like if they had on their work. But he said at the same time that also doesn't work all the time, especially if students don't have like that Wi-Fi connection, like because it's mostly by email. You don't really want to give your phone number out to a student, but like by email, like that's kind of hard if you don't have Wi-Fi. But he said for the most part, it worked pretty good, and most people were able to use that like in a good manner, which is nice. And then the last one he said is what they do now, and they didn't really. This is another one that they kind of did, but not like to the extent that they wish they did. Is create shared online folders. So like they have these online Google Drives that they would share with the whole department and the whole school, but now they're creating some that can be shared with all students, and there's kind of been allows for them to have the students like it's called like Canvas. So it's like you post it on Canvas, and then you can see what you've done throughout the whole semester. So if you have questions, you can just go back and look at that instead of just relying on your teacher. So it's kind of like self-driven like work, if that makes sense. So like then you have that idea of, hey, if I miss this on Tuesday when we're out of school, then on Monday I can look at it ahead of time to be aware of what I need to do before like your Wi-Fi's out, quote unquote.
Awesome. How do you think you did at summarizing these points?
I think I did good at summarizing the points, especially for coaching the college level, because I've been there. I've seen both sides of having good leadership, bad leadership. And then I think I did good at teaching because I was a student during that time, and then education, that's a huge problem we talk about is COVID. And then I think in regards to Pancheros, I've never worked in a fast food line or any restaurant, so I didn't really like resonate much with me with that. And then the youth sports one is brand new to me. I just started coaching youth sports, so it's just different for me, but I think I resonated really well with the first 2, and then the last Pancheros and youth sports were kind of a little different for me.
Awesome.